The Game Schooler Podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network, is a weekly audio show that educates new and experienced gamers about the awesomeness of tabletop gaming. In this week's episode, we'll cover Colorbrain, our game of the week, discuss fighting the inner completionist in the School of Gaming, and wrap it up by revealing our high five retail games at Field Deluxe. Welcome to the Game Schooler Podcast. I'm your host, Doug Kotecki, along with my co-host, Dr. Michael McCabe. How's it going, Michael?
Hey, Doug. Good to see you again, buddy.
I know. It feels like we've already done this once.
Yeah. Maybe we have.
Maybe. Well, we'll let the listeners decide. Let's dive right in. We got some follow-up. We have released a video version of our podcast, and the plan is to have that going forward, so hopefully you enjoy that. I think it goes live on the Spotify platform, but it's also available on YouTube. We've also updated all of our podcasts on YouTube as well. Apparently, there's a big audience of podcasters or people that listen to podcasts. Sorry, I got distracted by Michael's big gulp there. That's
Why are you calling that out again, man?
Is that a 5-gallon bucket?
No, but when I have a glorious mustache, as I do for about 3 weeks out of the year, I need to drink liquids out of a straw.
Hey, stay hydrated, man.
That's right. Hydration is key, Doug. All right, back to you.
We also got a follow-up on the Discord server about our high five last week. Last week we talked about great games that we thought needed new artwork, and I was called out.
And Doug was wrong.
Doug was wrong. I had a game that I put in my honorable mention, but said it didn't make my list because the artwork had been improved, and my version was the original one that I don't think is that great, and I got called out on the Discord server, which I appreciate people interacting on the Discord server. I don't appreciate Michael getting a pass for saying that Cascadia needed new artwork.
Well, I think it's more of your attack on the beloved Lost Cities, right? The two-player only, Dr. Reiner Knizia classic, loved by people worldwide, I might add. And
I feel like we did make
attack. And hey, Discord stood strong, baby.
I feel like we did preface that by saying it was a great game. The title of the high five, Great Games. And again, artwork is subjective, but I will stand by my statement that I think the original artwork for Lost Cities not so great. Every time I play it, the new artwork has a panorama that if you laid all the cards down, it would show the whole thing. The original one was kind of zooming in with each card, and it gets kind of awkward.
I don't think you're going to change anyone's mind, Doug.
Maybe not.
It's okay. It's okay.
I'm not necessarily mad that people called me out about it. I'm mad that people did not call you out about Best Sobel artwork and that they're just a free pass. That's fine. Cascadia is hot garbage in the artwork department.
You said that, not
Everyone's
me. Go back and listen to last week's episode. All right.
What's that?
I burned out on animals. That's all.
Yeah, but that's a re-theme. That's a re-theme.
Exhausted on animals.
That's a re-theme. That's not new art.
Oh, frenemy. All right. Anything else to follow up on for you, Doug? Douglas?
I don't think so. I do want to highlight our Discord. In all fun, that we do appreciate getting the feedback and the banter and discussion that happens over there. Yes, Michael.
And I have one thing to follow up with that. We have folks who are going back and listening to earlier episodes. And in one episode, I think it was 16 or 17, we talked about the concept of the scar of the screen. And we were both, coming just out of the COVID times where people were living on their screens. And so I am going to research and basically here's what I'm trying to say. I'm going to look at what studies have come out over the last 2 or 3 years. I'm going to follow up on the Discord and compare it to previous research. That's what I'm
Sure.
trying to say succinctly, but really struggling with. So I have time on my calendar this Saturday to do a deep dive, get back into Google Scholar, and just see what studies have come out. What are the impacts of 8 to 12 hours of screen time per day for teenagers and teenagers, and so look for that on the Discord. Kind of a recap from a previous segment that we did over 2 years ago now.
Yeah, a lot of great content and discussion going on in Discord. You can sign up for that by going to gameschooler.com/Discord to learn more about it and get all the links to sign up and all of that goodness. What's awesome in gaming, Michael?
What's awesome in gaming this week is that one of our folks on the Discord actually started a Game Schooler podcast fan group on Board Game Arena. So it's a public group. Anyone can join. Today already, I've invited one of our friends of the podcast, Dan, to that group. And so if you want to play Forest Shuffle together, if you want to play a 6-person game of Llama together, or maybe you want to go through a heavier game, we could do that. And it's a great place for people who are in our community to connect, because we might not always be able to get to the same convention. Doug and I don't travel to Singapore together often.
Yeah,
but on
regularly.
Board Game Arena, we can get together and play games. So I thought that was awesome that Brew and Buzz started that. Kristen, who's on our Discord and very active, went ahead and did that, and the logo is up and everything. So it looks great. Can't wait to play games with people on that platform.
Yeah, and there'll be more details on that at the Discord. So gameschooler.com/Discord to check
How about
that
you, Doug?
out.
What's awesome for you this week?
I want to highlight campaign games and legacy games. They're can be difficult to get to the table, right? To get the same group of people over and over again to play a single game continuously. But Michael and I have been diving into the Lost Ruins of Arnak campaign. It's a cooperative campaign for solo or 2 players, and we've been going through that. And I just appreciate, and I do think it's an awesome opportunity to get games back to the table that maybe I wouldn't as frequently. So we're having a good time going through that, or at least I am.
Great
having
time.
a good time going through the scenarios. I think we're about halfway through. But I think often in campaign and legacy style games, the knock is, when am I going to have a chance to play them? And the flip side is, it's really awesome when you do and you get to bring a good game back to the table repeatedly. And so I appreciate that, and I think it is awesome when you get the chance to do it.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Doug. And what I love about the Lost Ruins of Arnak campaign, it takes a solo gaming experience that I enjoy and then allows another player into that. It's almost like, when you're playing a video game and you go to a next level, and then when that moment in time happened, when Xbox Live and Sony PlayStation had that, where you could actually play games with other people and have that same type of experience, I feel like I'm having that with the campaign of Lost Ruins of Arnak. It's not just me playing solo, it's me going through this level with another person, and the game is changing from campaign to campaign. I think there's 6 in the game, and we just finished the 3rd. So we're about halfway through, and it's been a blast. And you've mentioned it before, but maybe if you want to talk about kind of how we're being stretched as gamers in that.
Yeah, so the other cool thing about this is that there are 2 leaders in the expansion, and Michael and I are doing what is naturally opposite of what is natural to us when playing Arnak. So one character is more designed for the exploring phase, and the other character is more designed going up the research track. And if you want more information on Arnak, we did have an episode a couple weeks back about that, so if you want a deep dive into that. But normally I enjoy doing the exploration part of the game, and Michael is usually the one hunkering down on the research track. And those are flipped. So I'm spending more time in the research track just based on the character that I'm playing with. And Michael's is more rewarding to his player or character if he goes up and explores and goes to discover new areas. So it's kind of cool to get out of your comfort zone. A lot of times when I play Euro or heavier style games, I kind of pick a track, and I usually don't necessarily pick stuff that I think is going to win. I do the things that I enjoy doing. And so I kind of fall into a trap of, I think if you have a heavy emphasis on the research track in Arnak, you do better. But I also more enjoy the randomness of what's going to be on the other side of this tile and taking that crapshoot. And so I like doing that at the peril of me winning the game. It's kind of inverse.
In the campaign mode, it's tight. I mean, the difference from winning and losing is one decision, and it could be the decision that you made on your third turn. So the cooperative nature of it, every turn, you have to talk about it with the person that you're playing with. It's a two-person only campaign. You could play it solo or with a second player, and we're obviously playing with two players, and it's almost as if we are on a trail or on an adventure together. I can't just go ahead and take a turn and do what I want to do because it could have a severe detrimental effect on the entire game.
Yeah.
Same with Doug. He could just make a decision because he thinks it's the best decision, but great, thanks, Doug. We just lost the game. And I'm definitely going to let him know about it. But it's been a really fun experience. I'm glad that we've gotten it to the table. I'm looking forward to the next adventure.
Well, and one of the things I know we talk about, earlier you talked about the scar on the screen and spending, the whole concept of that is spending time offline and spending time with people. And I just think about the luxury of you and I playing that game and you and I going through the Dice Throne adventures a couple times together, and the amount of bonding and friendship that brought out from us. Obviously we already were friends and had a relationship, but even just those experiences to work together, to solve problems together, and it's not a 3 or 4 person experience where you're juggling things. It's like it's me and you hunkering down and doing something. And I think that is a part of the hobby that also gets kind of glossed over, is those connection points that you can have outside of just the superficial, like, social aspect of, like, we're getting together and playing games. We're having a great time. But no doubt there is a level of enrichment and bonding that we have done over gaming over the past several years that I would think brought us closer together.
Absolutely.
But people don't necessarily talk about that as it's more of just like, oh yeah, you get to interact with people.
No,
and I think
that's
it
a
can
great
be a lot
point.
deeper.
No, it is. That's a great point, because if I showed up at your house for a barbecue in the summertime and I'm wearing a Shadow Thief T-shirt, right, that I pick up from Roxley's website, or if my kids got it for me for Father's Day, you'd get a chuckle out of that, and you'd be like, "Yep, that was Michael's character in Dice Throne Adventures. That means something." If I wore that Shadow Thief T-shirt to church or to the gym, right, to basketball practice, they'd be like, "Is something wrong with Coach? Coach, all right? What's going on?" Because you don't have that connection, right? And I think the hobby allows that. There are so many different branches on that tree, and we've talked about it when we went to Gen Con, just all of the different things to see and do and experience. I think that's a great point that you bring up. It's a connection.
Yeah. You show up with that to basketball practice, all the players are going, oh, God. What
well,
new
I've been talking about it for years now. I got to get a schmedium.
What new skill seminar did Coach go to that now we're going to be doing? The Shadow Thief program, new defensive form. So, all right. Well, if you like what we're doing, spread the word about the podcast. We'd appreciate that. And if you have questions or comments, feel free to reach out to us, email@gameschooler.com. With that out of the way, let's head over to the game of the week.
The game of the week. The game of the week is an in-depth look at a family-friendly game we think you should try if you get the chance. This week's game is Colorbrain. Doug, give us the stats.
All right. Originally published in 2017 by Big Potato Games, Colorbrain is designed by Tristan Williams, and the art is by Zoe Lee. The player count is 2 to 12 players. However, that's kind of a misnomer, and I think the box may say 2 to 20. There's 4 sets, 2 to 4 teams or players can play this game. So however many people you want to fit on the team is how many players you can play up to. There are 4 player sets in the game. Game takes about 30 minutes. The side of the box says 8+. Board Game Geek in a rarity says 10+, goes higher. Normally, Board Game Geek would say this is for 4-year-olds and higher, caps out at 10. But no, Board Game Geek says 10+, and I tend to agree with them. I think this is one that is a multi-generational game. However, if you're playing with adults and you did go down to that 8-year-old level, I think the adults are always going to destroy the kids. So I think if you go up into the 10 to 12, you can start playing with adults. And above 12, I think it's fair game. In that 8 to 12 range, I think playing with other kids is going to be a sweet spot for that. This is going to be classified as a family game or a party game, and it was a 2020 Spiel des Jahres recommended game. This is a family quiz game where all the answers are colors, but can you pick the right ones? Think you can remember what color the 5 Olympic rings are? Or the colors in a tube of Smarties? How about the color of Superman's underpants? To start, each team must hold 11 cards in front of them. Each one of them is a color card with the name and the color represented on the card. So if it's a blue card, it says blue and it's blue. And you are going to select cards from your hand of 11 color cards and put them down in front of you secretly to try and answer the question. Everybody is then going to reveal their answers. If everybody gets the answer right, there's going to be 1 bonus point given to the next question. So the points are going to carry over from round to round. If you are correct and somebody else got it wrong, you are going to get points for every other player that got it wrong. So if you're playing a 4-player game and you got it correct and everybody else was wrong with their answer, you're going to get 3 points, 1 for each player that got it wrong. And you keep doing that until you, I believe, score 10 points, triggers the end game, and whoever has the most points win, the first person to get to 10. So that's the general rules of the game. The game comes with this little box. There's 300 cards, double-sided. Maybe it's 150 cards, but they're double-sided, so you get 300 questions in the game. And this little dispenser tells you at the top there's a number. That's how many colors are in the answer. There's a window that then is the clue. For example, this one is a baby swan for 1 color, or, Syd Barrett's most famous band, 1 color. And so then you would select one of your colors, place it out, and that's how you score. So a really cool production, the way that they do this, because you can go all the way through this deck, flip it around, and then there's a whole other deck in the box, and it kind of pushes it forward so it hides the answer. Just a real cool setup. So what do you like about this game, Michael?
I love that kids love to play this game.
Yeah.
I love that this game works in so many different settings. Listeners, you don't have to be a long-time listener. Anyone who listens more than one episode knows that I struggle with colors, yet I could play this game. There's no issue with it. So it's not like you have to be an expert in colors. It's a trivia party game that works in multiple settings. How about you?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is anyone can play this game. The rules are simple, straightforward. You get it set up and running in about 30 seconds. The other thing is there's a lot of flexibility with this game to modify the scoring however you want. And usually this is one of those games that you can, for me, I know it's good because when you finish playing it, everybody immediately says, let's do it again and again. And it can devolve into an activity in the best possible way.
Yep.
Like eventually the scoring doesn't matter and people have fun, and there are weird things where it's like, geez, I feel like I see that every day, but I'm not sure what it is or what the answer should be. And it's like, is it red or orange? And you're trying to remember in your brain, whether it's a famous cartoon character or something like that. So I like that. I also think this is a great game that works in a whole bunch of different situations, right?
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is a great game that you can use as a team game, and it can work in the classroom. A teacher can facilitate this game, divide the kids up into teams, and play. You can do it in a library. You can play as a family game night. You can do it a party game after, kids are in bed and you're going to have a good time. You could modify it anyway. It's so flexible. It's such a flexible, easy system, but still very engaging at the same time.
Now, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, Doug, okay?
Uh-oh.
I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Yes.
Do you own many board games?
I own, yes.
Okay.
Many.
Okay. And I guess that's the only question. I won't put you on the spot too much. I'll just tell a little story here to our listeners. Dearest listener, for a lot of years now, multiple years, Doug and I have known each other and I'll ask, what'd you do? What games did you play? Banter. And Colorbrain would consistently come up. You have played this with your oldest child all the way down to your youngest child over the years.
Yeah.
Yes?
Correct.
So they keep going back to it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But the key is, so here's the other caveat, is if you are playing regular Colorbrain and you find out that there's a little bit too much of a balance towards adults, or you feel like the kids aren't getting things like, my kids aren't going to know Syd Barrett's most famous band, which is Pink Floyd, by the way. And so my 12-year-old's not going to know that unless
They might have said Leonard Skinner.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jethro Tull. And so if you need to balance the scales a little more, there is a Disney Colorbrain that goes through the different characters, like what color is Woody's vest, and what colors is Buzz Lightyear, Mickey Mouse's pants, things like that. And that completely evens the scale with adults, because there's characters in the same way that my kids have no idea who Syd Barrett is. Sometimes there's people that come up in the Disney game, I'm like, I don't even know who that is, let alone what colors their fur is. And so that's a great equalizer if you want to do that. My kids have loved the Disney Colorbrain version, and it is, out of all the games that I have in my collection, it is one of the few that my kids will get off of the shelf themselves and play. Or when they have friends over, it is a board game that they will pull off the shelves and play with their friends, because they can teach it, they know how to play it, and it doesn't matter if you're getting the scoring right. They just go and they have a good time. And you can do it so, if you want, maybe don't have the points carry over. And there might be some...
So Molly's not getting up on a stool and getting Mechs versus Minions down to play with her friends and her friends' dolls?
Yeah, and there's some alternative rules. There's a color capture card that adds another thing, a little level of strategy. I think you had mentioned one time that the board game geek rating of this maybe is not so high. And it's like, if you're playing this game thinking that it's a deeply strategic game that you're going to show your dominance of the color wheel over all of your friends, it's not that type of game. You're playing the wrong game. You're going into it with wrong expectations. And what else, Michael?
Well, it's mother-in-law approved. We've talked about that with other games, but this is a game you could take to your in-laws and have a good time. Doug just mentioned, in a house where there are a few hundred games, maybe several hundred games, this is one that the kids gravitate towards. And we talked about it at the top of the segment. We're talking about it again now. The multi-generational aspect of this game just makes it really appealing for us as gamers, and I think for our audience. The other thing that just shines with it is the comprehension. Because though the points carry from round to round, it forces a little bit of thinking where you want to get the right answer. And so there's that just enough of a reward factor with the game that I think it brings about some great thinking and some great moments where kiddos, are, I don't want to say forced, but they're forced to comprehend and really think about the question that's being asked.
Yeah, one thing to be aware of is when you are playing with those points rolling over, there is the opportunity for some large swings in the game.
Oh, yeah.
So you could have 4 rounds that carry over, and that's 4 extra points. And when you're only playing to 10, if you happen to get one right and 3 other people miss it, you could get 7 points in a single round and completely end the game. So if you're playing with younger kids, that is something to be aware of. But this game has a lot of group discussion after the fact of, oh my gosh, I didn't know that, or really, is it that color, that type of thing. But then even when you get kids together on a team, and we played over New Year's, and our daughters were on a team together, and just to see them working together, and I think it might be this, or it's this, or somebody would step in and say, oh no, I know it's this. And it's like, okay, go with it, And so seeing your kids use teamwork and the group discussion and making those decisions is really awesome. I tend to think that if we had played this version before we did our top 50 games, family games of all time, this may have been on the list, because I feel like it does hit a lot of the boxes that we look for. I don't wait till next year.
It might bump something out. Yeah. Wow.
The other thing too that we should mention about this one is extremely available and affordable. So most mass market stores, I know for sure Walmart has it, and it's available on Amazon, and it's usually below $20. So very affordable to get a game. $20 to get a game that's this flexible is pretty rare.
Yeah.
That can fit into as many spots as this one can.
Yeah, and it can be taken into a classroom, be taken over to somebody else's house. You don't have to worry about it being precariously placed on a table and having the cards scatter everywhere. You're going to be all right.
That'd be the worst. Who would do that? It's a disaster waiting to happen. Anything else, Michael?
No, not for me. The only thing I would caution folks, if you go too young, you need to have one independent reader in the group. So if you're a 3rd or 4th grade teacher and you're like, boy, this really sounds like a game I want to get and bring into the classroom, just keep in mind you will need, there's some text on the cards. So you'll need one independent reader to be able to facilitate that game. But if you have that, that's why we set the cutoff age more towards that 10 than that 8.
Yeah.
And I certainly wouldn't want to just say, okay, 6-year-olds, come on over, we're going to play this game, and then walk away and expect that they're going to be able to play that game independently. That's my only note of caution with this game.
Yeah, and the younger you go, the more likely you're going to have better luck with the Disney version. If you're having trouble finding this game, it is, I've seen it both ways, but it seems like the publisher, Colorbrain, is one word. No space in between it. It's all one big word, Colorbrain.
With the British spelling.
It just depends on which version you have.
Okay.
So the U.S. version has the U.S. spelling, but there are several variations of title, and so like on Board Game Geek, if you look up Colorbrain and space it, you will find it. But when you go to the page, it's written as one word. So some variation there if you're looking for it. I don't think you should have trouble finding it in any sort of Google search, but just as a caveat to throw that out there. So that is our game of the week. No surprise that it was a 2020 Spiel des Jahres recommended game from Big Potato Games. That is Colorbrain. Let's move on to the School of Gaming.
The School of Gaming. In the School of Gaming, we discuss concepts, keywords, etiquette, and helpful ideas in the world of gaming. This week, we're going to discuss Fight the Inner Completionist. And I think I'm actually going to take the lead in on this one. Atypical of most School of Gaming segments, but this is challenging as Doug and I are both completionists in our own and different ways. For example, all things Marvel related, that's Doug. Lorcana, Doug. Board games that I go in on for greater than $150, that's me. I'm going to struggle with that one. So I'm curious to see how you want to take this, or words of wisdom, but I think both of us in our own ways have definitely wrestled with being a completionist.
Yeah, it certainly is an issue that's popping up all the time, and it's something, like you said, I struggle with. I think you struggle with sometimes. And there are a handful of games that I am a completionist on, and I know what they are. However, some of those games that I consider myself a completionist on, I know that I'm actually not. Okay.
Interesting.
So
Say more about that.
For example, something like Marvel United, I have I got a lot of the pledges on Kickstarter, but I don't have all of the plastic tokens. I don't have all of the cardboard components. There's been some promos that have been released at conventions that I haven't gotten. So if I were theoretically a true completionist, I would have all of those. But I don't. But I also still consider myself a completionist of having a lot of it. And I think there are those two distinctions of full-blown completionist to your own rules. And I think that's the important thing is you can make your own rules of what you want to collect, what you want to have, however you want it to be. So just because some guy online doesn't think you're a completionist, if you feel like you have everything that you need, you're a completionist, and that's fine. So I think that's one thing to kind of keep in mind is that nobody else dictates to you what being a completionist is. You can have your own rules.
Yeah, I'm processing the words that you're saying. That was me thinking there. Apologies for the moments of thinking. We both have hobbies outside of board gaming, right? And that's where I want to really stick to our topic and our audience. But I love what you said there about setting personal rules and being okay with those rules. And the other thing that you said there that really hit with me is some things I just can't keep up on.
Yeah.
You know, when you talked about the things in Marvel United that you do not have, I thought, man, how could anyone keep up? If you don't have it all, how could one human possibly have it all, even if you've backed everything on Kickstarter and have painted, 200 different minis? For me, I know Lost Ruins of Arnak. I know Tapestry. If anything comes out for those, I'm feeling itchy. I got to get it. I got to stay up on it. And those are two of my favorites. I got to make sure that I have it on the shelf. Just because if somebody came over, I potentially, it's that same sense that we've talked about potential. Yeah. So from a collection standpoint, I'm not necessarily a completionist where I need to have it all to have it all. From a board game standpoint, that's not how I look at it. For me, it's that sense of potential. Well, if the right two people came over and if they loved Lost Ruins of Arnak, like I love Lost Ruins of Arnak, I want to make sure that they could play with their specific leader that they've been wanting to play with. That's the challenging part for me.
Yeah. I think the other thing is knowing when and it's okay to tap out, right?
For you.
For anybody for example, I started getting Marvel Legendary, which is a deck building game, cooperative deck building game. And then, you know what? They just kept making expansions. And at a certain point, I'm like, I've got enough. I've got more than I could ever use in a lifetime. I don't need more. I think it would be cool to have every map collection for Ticket to Ride. But I don't have time, and I'm not going to play every map collection for Ticket to Ride. So as cool as I think it would be to have on my shelf, at a certain point I said, I can't keep up with this. I don't want to keep up with this. And that's okay too. I mean, I think anytime you're talking about adding expansions or variations or promos and things like that, it comes down to, am I actually going to play, or is it about the collection? Do I just want the collection, or is it about actually playing? And I think the important thing, and we talk about this a lot on the podcast, and it's a big thing that I talk about with my kids as well, is I don't care what decision you make as long as you know why you're making it.
Yeah.
So if you're just buying expansion, promo because you feel like you need to have it to keep up with some unwritten rule, that's bad. If you are collecting it because you're like, I want to have this complete set of Ticket to Ride, everything that they've ever made of Ticket to Ride, and it's just something that I hold dear, that's okay too. And it's okay to say, I'm never going to play these. They don't need to sit on my shelf. I don't want to be a completionist in this. That's okay too. But as long as you know why you're making those decisions, I think that's one of the most important things that you can do. There is no right or wrong answer, because sometimes the hunt of, I'm trying to hunt down that promo, I'm trying to hunt down that missing card, is a hobby and fun to some people in itself. If I ever come across this, I'm going to pick it up. I can't wait. And finding that kind of grail moment. There was a Ticket to Ride promo that came out 15 years ago. It was only at Gen Con, and I've never seen it. And being on the hunt for that can be cool. Like, that is a hobby. And like I said, neither is right or wrong, right?
Yeah, and I think where I struggle with that whole inner completionist sense, and I talked about it at the opening part of the segment, but is that whole sunken cost fallacy of I've already invested multi-hundreds of dollars into a single game, which sounds really bad to say out loud, folks, but I do have Foundations of Rome in my collection.
Yeah.
So when the Foundations of Rome expansion comes out, and there's a possibility to play it solo, and they're offering a play mat, that's something that I do wrestle with, and I'd go back and forth on. That's gotten better over time, I think, just because of understanding I'm not going to get to play all the games.
Yeah.
I don't need any more games. More is just more. That's all that it is. But that sense of collecting, if I'm already invested into a product at a high level, I know that I'm going to struggle not having it all. And I think that's where the Marvel United example is a really good example. Our game of the week last week that we revisited was also our game of the week in episode 1. I just have the base retail version because I know if I get into that rabbit hole, oh man, now I got to get the X-Men. Now I got to chase this. Now I got to chase that. And so and that's where you and I are different. If I get into a rabbit hole, I'm going to go all the way down, and I want to see what's at the bottom. And then a lot of times I'll often just climb all the way up and either trade it, sell it, and look for a different rabbit hole to go down. And that gets into that awareness in the hobby, right? And that's where people are different. And I think the other thing that comes into it for me too is just the space. Sometimes being a completionist, I don't necessarily have the space, and I'm talking actual like space
Physical.
in my home.
Yes.
To put everything.
Yeah.
And the moment where that became clear was when the Everdell complete collector's edition arrived, even though it became incomplete like a week later when that kindergarten pack came out, but I digress. And the box was 20.3 pounds. And my family was like, Dad, you don't have it. Where are you going to put that?
Yeah.
I might have to put it in the built-in bookshelves. We might have to take out the book and like that moment and just realizing like, okay, this is a real thing. I'm not going to be able to keep up if they continue to make more Everdell because I just have this 20-pound box. What else do I need?
Well,
I can't keep up.
Well,
I'm
and
done.
how quickly it can escalate.
Yeah.
Right? And the rate at which games are becoming discounted, more easily available, it does not take much to have your collection swell in no time to a point that it becomes unmanageable. Go ahead.
Just to put a bow and then I'll send it back to you. But that was the moment for me was with Everdell Farshore. I pre-ordered it without thinking about it. I'm like, I love Everdell. And then I got the game and it just didn't work as well. And that was kind of a bookend moment for me that started with, okay, I've got this 20-pound box that I have to find space for in my house. And then they came out with another game. And although Everdell is one of my favorite games of all time, that's where I kind of tapped out and just rinsed my hands in the hobby of being a completionist with anything.
Well, I think that is hard when it's a game that you like the original of and they announce anything for it. And it's like, well, of course I will love that. But that's not always the case. And it's so easy to get blinded into, well, I love that, so of course I'm going to get the expansion for it. And the amount of expansions, I know we've talked about expansions and stuff in the past, and this is kind of a little bit of an offshoot of that. But there are games where it's like, I love that game, I bought the expansion, and then it's like, but I never play the expansion because I don't have enough people that know the base game well enough to throw the expansion in. So at that point, you're in a different scenario. On the flip side, if you have a game or your family has a game, and I'm just going to use Ticket to Ride as an example, that you play Ticket to Ride once a week or 2 times a month, and an expansion comes out and those quality of life upgrades for the game, and there's a new map, there's a new this, we're adding that. If those are coming out once, 2 or 3 times a year, and that gets you playing the game more regularly, that's awesome. Then if that keeps your favorite game fresh and new all the time, then keep getting those. But just be aware of what you're doing.
But how many favorite games do you have? Right? Because even in the games we've talked about, and I'm just going to use strong I language with me, not you, Doug. This is me, okay? But Lost Ruins of Arnak, Tapestry, and Everdell, right there, that will fill up a 3x4 calyx. Because publishers are smart, right? If games are selling, they're going to get you more. They're going to get you more. They're going to get you more. And so I guess the argument that I'm putting on the table is, in our hobby, I'm not sure anyone can truly be a completionist anymore.
No, you have to pick different things. You have to it's either a brand. Nobody's going to be a completionist on board games in general. That would be
there's just new
insanity.
Editions. There's new this, new that. If something wins the Spiel, you can be guaranteed that's going to get a new edition at some point with upgraded Vincent Dutrait art.
Yeah.
So
it was something that was a bigger issue for me when I first got started, that I want to have, they came out with another expansion. And I think that if there's anything that I can pass on of wisdom, of time and experience, is the number of those purchases that I made that then in hindsight now I have realized I didn't play them. I'm not playing the expansion. It's like, it's cool to have them and to want them, and then I get them and I'm not using them. And then the idea of being completionist on certain titles disappeared now. And every time something new gets announced for a game, even a game that I love, like, for example, if they announced that they were coming out with an expansion for Bad Company, a game I really enjoy and I think they could easily add expansions to, my first instinct is, gotta have it. My second instinct is, whoa. Am I going to play this? Am I going to play it enough times that it's any better than just getting the base version out again and play that one? And the answer is probably no. But there is that knee-jerk reaction of like, must have, love it, So I don't know if that gave some good advice, if there's some wisdom in there. It is something that I struggle with. I know you struggle with in a collection versus playing. And I think, again, the main takeaway is no matter what your decisions are, know why you're making them and know that you have the freedom to change and make the rules however you want to fit your collection and personal needs. So let's move on to the high five. If you're anything like us, you're constantly on the hunt for new games to try out. This week, Michael and I are going to be talking about retail games that you can get that feel deluxe. And this was a hard list for me because I probably had 10 to 15 options as I was going through my collection and kind of weeding stuff out. And I sent a text to you and I said, I think this is an indication of where the hobby has gone to, where the production quality that is coming out on, in some cases, mass market retail games that feels like would have been Kickstarter exclusive 7 years ago is leaps and bounds, right?
And it's now $24 in a box that you can get at Target.
Yeah. And
So how many of your games are from before 2015?
None.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, my earliest is 2017. 3 out of the 5 have been games of the week. I tried
5 out of 5 for me.
5 of them. Did you say?
Yep.
Yeah. I have some other ones that my honorable mention list is some of them. Actually, all of them on my honorable mentions were games of the week, and I kind of wanted to shine light on some different games and kind of different versions of Deluxe, of what that means, where some of them have fancy bits, some of them have cool inserts and things like that. So we'll get into it as we go along. I'm curious to see how many crossover we have and which ones that may carry over to what I have in my honorable mention. But
Well, I'm going to guess that number 5 is not on your list. Number 5 for me is Azul. It was a game of the week all the way back in episode 7.
it's on my short list.
Yeah, and in Azul, you are pulling tiles from a bag. Tiles are coming out from a bag and getting put on coasters. You're then going to select one type of those tiles and put it down on your board as you try to collect patterns and score points, and the rest of the tiles are getting pushed into the center. There is something about those tiles. This game could have used cardboard punch-outs, but the fact that it used these chunky acrylic tiles, it just has that feel, and the cloth bag and how everything fits together in there. It was our game of the week in episode 7, published by Plan B Games. Michael Kiesling, experienced designer. We also have some guides out there that dive into this game a little bit more, but definitely a game that I enjoy playing. I actually enjoy playing it on Board Game Arena, which you wouldn't think because of a game where you're talking about the deluxe feel of the components. But that's to say, it's also a great game. It works on so many different levels. You can get it at Target on sale for $24, $25 a couple times throughout the year.
Yeah.
It does MSRP right around $34.99 to $40 right now, but definitely has a deluxe feel for me. Number 5 is Azul.
Yep, great choice there. My number 5 is a game that we very briefly mentioned on this podcast in the past, and that is War Chest. In War Chest, it's a kind of like a bag building chess skirmish game, but all of the tokens in the game are like poker chips, and they're screen printed. They're not stickers on them, and it comes in this box that you fold over with a magnetic gate, so it feels like you're opening up this massive book, and the chips are all laid nice out in the box, and it feels higher end than what you would kind of expect. I think if I handed that to people and they feel the weight of it, they'd be like, well, surely this was a deluxe Kickstarter that you got all of these tokens with. And it's like, no, that's just the game. And it's a great 2 to 4 player game, essentially a 2-player game. You can kind of play it with teams. It came out in 2018 by AEG designers Trevor Benjamin and David Thompson, but it just has that weight to it that I think really, and especially at the time that it came out, 2018, has a lot of modern features to it that you'd expect to find on a modern Kickstarter.
Yeah, that's a great call. It was on my honorable mention. Those same 2 designers have also done the Undaunted series and have done just some games where the production quality is really high. All right, over to me. Number 4 is Her Story. It was our game of the week back in episode 95. The designers are Nick Bentley, Emerson Matsuuchi, and Daniel Reynolds. And why Her Story has a deluxe feel for me, again, some of it just has to do with what Underdog Games does when they publish a game. You get the box open, and when I open that, I feel like I am immersed and have this sense of, wow, what's going on here? There's a wow factor with the wooden bits in the cloth bag and the art. The art from Eunice Adai and Christina Aguirre, it just gives me a feel of, I didn't think this would be a $30 game off of Amazon. This really feels more. So that's my number 4 is Her Story.
Well, my number 4, I'm going to keep it with Underdog Games, and I put Trekking Through History Came out in 2022. We talked about it in episode 87, designer Charlie Bink. And this one's got a couple of things. It's got an awesome insert, the playmat main board. So you roll it out, you're ready to go. And then all of the tokens in the game are little rubbery plastic pieces that so easily could have just been punch outs, that there's that extra element of the tactile nature of that and some of the gems that are in the game, and of course the artwork. But the fact that you open up the box and you pull it out and you're ready to go in a minute and a half adds a lot to the presentation of feeling like, oh yeah, this is a well designed, developed game that feels better than just based on the feeling of everything.
And I didn't put it on my list because I have the Kickstarter version.
It's the same.
And that's awesome.
Yeah, the Kickstarter version is the same. The only thing different was a solo module that I think they added into the regular version anyway. So
that's really good to know.
The game that you get on Amazon is the same game that I got for backing it, with no difference in production. And that was one thing that I had to kind of be aware of. I looked on some and I was like, ooh, that's a good one. And then I'm like, no, I have the deluxe version of that. It's deluxe because it feels
It's deluxe because I have the deluxe.
Yeah.
Great. Well, number 3, there might be crossover here, but number 3 is a game we talked about in episode 78, and that is Planted. Phil Walker Harding. Well. All right, then let's just share about it together here. Phil Walker Harding and Buffalo Games, incredible designer, and Buffalo Games, dollar for dollar. We've talked about it in the past. I don't know what they're doing to get that much game into the box. And full disclosure, there was also a pricing mistake at Target when I got this, so I think I have some bias because I got it for $20.
Yeah.
So when you get an extra deal on a game, it can make it feel extra deluxe. But the wooden bits, the quality, the cloth bag, I mean, I'll send it back to you, Doug.
Yeah, well, this is the first game that I was blown away by. I was walking through Target the other day, and it was on their clearance shelf for $20, and normal price is $30. And even at $30, it was the first game I ever opened up, and I was like, how did they do that? How is this possible?
Yeah.
How are other companies selling me games for $30 that have a whole bunch of cardboard that I'm punching out for days and days, and this one has plastic and wood components that are ready to go right out of the gate? It just boggled my mind how that was possible. And I don't know if they're shopping at the thrift stores that our Discord users are going to, that they've assembled just gobs and gobs of pieces for a low price. But it was the first game that really made me take notice of. I think there had been a string of Summer Camp and the Willy Wonka chocolate game that Buffalo Games had done up to that point, and then they had Planted, a game of nature and nurture, and it was like, whoa, these guys are operating on a different level for mass market.
And the other stats of the game as well, it's 20 to 30 minutes, very, very simple, and just the whole set or resource collection to fulfill an order of your house plant on your card, and how some of the bonuses work like you would expect from a Phil Walker Harding game. Game feels deluxe, man.
Yep.
It does.
100%.
It's a great little one. All right, back to me for number 2.
Yep.
And I have, this was episode 69 for us, Game of the Week, and that's Tenpenny Parks. And if folks will give me just one moment to pull that up on Board Game Geek, 2022, 1 to 4 players. Here's where I get the deluxe feeling. It has a little carousel in it that turns, and then you have the Vincent Dutrait art. And when I combine those two things with, I guess the game is up to $60 MSRP now. That price has ticked up a little bit. But we had a friend who helped with some of, I don't know if we would say the development or the insert, but
both.
We had both, right? We had an inside track on that because our friend Dan Cunningham did the insert and was involved with the development of the game. And when I got my version, I think I got it off of Game Nerds and opened it up. I can remember that sense of just a little bit of awe. Like, wow, I thought I was being treated to a special version before, but this is what the ordinary consumer gets. And so for me, it's that sense of, that Vincent Dutrait art has, even in the last few years, become somewhat ubiquitous.
Yeah.
But in that game, it just fits. It has a circusy theme. And as I'm planting my park out and I'm trying to get the things to work on my own board, I just like how it fits together. And that's with cardboard punch-out tokens.
Yeah.
But that carousel and just how it all works together has a little bit of a deluxe feel for me.
Yeah, awesome. My number 2 is from 2017. The oldest game on my list is from Libelud and Regis Bonasse, and that is Dice Forge. In Dice Forge, you have 2 dice, and you are adding new sides to your dice and upgrading those. And the way that they pulled this off, there's been quite several dice manipulation where you're creating your dice and adding sides, and they always seem kind of chintzy and cheap, and the graphic art's not very good. And this game knocks it out of the park. The faces are easy to get off. They're screen printed. They're really nice. And you open it up and they're all laid out. And it's like choose your own adventure to add new sides and hope that you roll them. It's kind of got elements of a deck builder or a bag builder in the idea of constructing your own dice on your turn. And just a really cool production, and the way that it's got this rubber, it's kind of a strap that holds that part of the insert down, so you can put it on its side and your pieces aren't flying all over the place. It's all set and ready to go. And so I just, not only for the toy factor, but how well it was executed, and it seems like one of those things like I said with War Chest, where it seems like this was something that, you could only do that with a Kickstarter, right? Raise a whole bunch of money to sell that. This one works on that front right out of the box, and that is Dice Forge.
Excellent. My number 1 is Parks. It was our game of the week back in episode 8. And I can remember where I was when I picked this up at Barnes & Noble. And I got it home, and I just assumed that Doug had a fancy Kickstarter version because that's what I had played. And when I got it home and unboxed it, and whoa, wait a second, these game trays come in the base version, and all of these bits are in the base version. And Keymaster Games just did an excellent job with the production. Henry Autobahn is the designer. We talked about this at length. We spent a whole episode talking about the incredible production. And yes, it's a long time ago. Maybe it's one we'll need to revisit down the road. But Parks is just a fantastic deluxeified feel with those wooden pieces and the trays that hold it. And you can even hand out trays to opposite ends of the table. And then the art too. The art is really incredible, and how it all just fits together in a somewhat small footprint of a box.
Yeah, no, that's a great choice. I remember the first time I saw that game, and it was like, this is something. This is fancy, the way that the art and everything is all tied together. Great choice. My number 1 we talked about in episode 57, and that is Fossilis, published in 2020 by Kids Table Board Games designer David Alberto Diaz. Not only does this game have a tray, you are putting plastic square tokens on top to symbolize sand and dirt and rock, and those tiles have symbols on them, and you're moving them around, and you're diving into containers with tweezers and pulling out little plastic bones, and it just, I mean, obviously we keep saying it over and over again, it feels deluxe. It feels like something that, again, Kickstarter, you would need to have that in order. And this was a Kickstarter game, but there's no difference between a lot of the major components of this game from the Kickstarter to the retail version. And I just think it's a joy when it's set up on table. People look at it and think, what is this? This is something else. I want to dive into it. So that's my number 1, Fossilis. As far as some honorable mentions, I had Dog Park for its artwork and its insert and tokens there. Seven Wonders Architects has great feel of once you get it built to just be able to pass out all the pieces to everybody. Wingspan art and components there. Penny Black is another Buffalo Games that's got great production value, and Disney Animated were all on my short list.
That's awesome. The only one that is on my honorable mention that we haven't already mentioned is My Little Scythe, episode 39. Just great pieces, and you can listen to that episode to find out more.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for us this week. If you like what we're doing, subscribe to the podcast, follow us on X. Reminder to join the Discord server, gameschooler.com/Discord. Next week, I don't know what game we're going to talk about. Michael and I have to discuss that, but we are going to be talking about worker placement variants and our top 10 from 2014. Thank you so much for spending the last hour or so with us. We truly appreciate it.
Now get out there and keep gaming.